did bring
This is Citizens Minutes 26 edition. My name is Robert Wilkins. Lately, each day on the plains of Auburn, the weather seems to be getting grander than the day before. It is beautiful today. There was a total of 4 speeches given in the Auburn City Council meeting on September the 2nd, 2025. This was the second straight council meeting that I have done a trifecta speeches. I attended 4 budget meetings totaling over 10 hours. I learned how blessed we are with the revenue, but how careless we are with distributing the audited revenue. This budget and past budgets are not for the average citizen. I never heard phrases like reducing the budget, cutting upper staff numbers, and cutting salaries, reducing taxes, on and on. Also, I talked about postponing a rural conditional use for 744 parcel ordinance in the rural areas so Auburn citizens could better understand this movement or move, but they turned it down. At the city's open forum, I spoke about how City Hall is stonewalling access to limited financial requests concerning solid waste management fund. I stated we as citizens have a right to know where every dollar is spent by the city, with no exception, every dollar, if we want that. The only lone speaker besides myself spoke with great concern and passion about a possible high-density mixed-use development near his home with up to 800 acres that is out on Lee Road 86 off of Farmville Road, near where 88 branches off between Pear Tree Road and Waverly. It is inside the city planning jurisdiction, but outside the optimal boundary, allowing no annexation. The speaker has attended several council meetings, planning meeting, and talked with council members on this issue. I attended all 4 workshops, budget workshops, totaling nearly 10 hours without having the proposed budget in my hand, but I still learned a lot. I'm foolish to think that the budget will change, but I am one of Auburn's voices. I learned how blessed we are with revenue and how careless we are distributing the audited revenue. This budget and past budgets are not for the average Auburn citizen. I plead that our citizens understand the lack of control over our city financials. I have never heard phrases from the mayor or council member or city manager like reducing the budget, reducing taxes, cutting upper staff members' numbers and salaries, excessive departmental movement of funds because of deficient control, and so much more. The E100 employees, city employees that make over 100,000, without our city manager at the top of the food chain, 250,000 with a $10,000 plus car allowance, wants to hire even more employees. We should help more citizens through our community service departments like daycare, seniors center, food pantries, food banks, homeless assisted rehabilitation houses, public services, wellness center, after-school program, community gardens, affordable housing. City of Auburn does a lot of good, but could redirect its millions of dollars from the overpaid bureaucrats, excessive vehicle inventory, and so forth to citizens' basic needs. Councilman Dawson thinks we should pay the E100s even more, which this budget is working to do so. But I agree with Dawson that you could never pay enough to our policemen and our firemen. Their families never know if they will even return. There are many good things in our budget, but the city needs to be better stewards of our money. We citizens request that this ordinance vote to be postponed for 90 days or deny unanimous consent. There's so many unanswered questions. This could be spot zoning, but the courts have said that this terminology was a little ambiguous. But it reminds me a little bit of Ordinance 3288, short-term rental, where you can discriminate against one neighbor while the other one can do a short-term rental. Several council meetings, it has been stated that we do not have the proper sewage capacity in the rural areas. Is the council way of and trying to encompass all the 744 parcels through providing leniency to pay for the needed sewage connections, or what? Have all the Auburn citizens that would be affected in these rural areas been contacted? Who are the stakeholders who created excitement among Auburn City staff while reviewing PUD, planned unit development criteria for this meeting and their positions in the community? Mayor Anders, the city council members, and the city managers have an incredible appetite to devour the rural land surrounding Auburn and feeding this insatiable Auburn revenue machine. Please postpone rural conditional uses on the 744 parcels for 90 days or deny unanimous consent. Thank you.
All conditional use requests would come before the Planning Commission and the City Council. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And anything that would be proposed by this item tonight would have to come as a conditional use.
That's correct. Anything marked C in the table for one permitted uses and is in your ordinance, if it's C, it's conditional. And also that means, Councilman Moorman, I think, and you may be headed there, you have to have adequate utilities and other things to meet the needs of that use. You can't just put a use on a lot that can't handle it. So even down to a septic tank, it has to percolate, or we've got issues, you can't get a permit for it. So most rural areas do not have city sewer available. They would be on septic tank, but there are things that are more in town that are on septic tank too, periodically, if we don't have sewer available.
So no uses other than conditional really are being discussed.
Correct. That's adding
Allowed.
those uses that aren't currently allowed in the rural zone and now allowing them conditionally if they meet certain conditions. There are permitted uses in the rural zone like feed and seed store and some other things. I'll have our planning director speak to that already exist. That this would be to allow additional ones, but conditionally, because say you take the planning commission's recommendation of it needs to be a busier road, and I think it's right in the middle, and some of you have dealt with in Councilman Dawson's ward, we have rural event centers that go on, and we might in Mayor Pro Tem Winton's ward, and that was a big discussion of the council at the time to allow an event center in essence out adjacent to people's property. Sometimes there's 2-acre lots and your neighbors are close, and so the goal of adding them conditionally is the council gets to review all that as planning commission does, and if somebody wants to put a brew pub and all of their neighbors come out and say, this isn't a good thing and this is why, and it's going to create an issue. You get to look at all of that at the then time. If it's not specifically already in there and it doesn't have a conditional by it being recommended by the staff, it wouldn't be allowed. The all other are things that don't currently exist in the table. So the North American Industrial Classification System, the NAICS codes, are what we use to define those uses. Those are also tied to our business licenses and how uses are defined. But people can come up with, you can say, well, pickleball courts years ago, nobody knew what those were, but that's a trend, and I'm not saying anybody's trying to put them out there. But as an example of we can't always anticipate, so this gives you the choice at the end of the day of whether or not a use could go out there.
So it adds some flexibility to, without having a hard no for
And
applicants.
use variances are not allowed to go to the Board of Zoning Adjustment. This is the only arbiter of uses, as the table of permitted uses in the City Council and Planning Commission in their review of conditional uses.
And as you all know, that ordinance was kind of drafted to have creative uses in creative places, not a lot of constraints associated with it. What we got in that meeting was, well, if this is what's going to be offering where we can locate these in different places, and at the time we were just kind of talking about this could go anywhere in the city without the current constraints that are approved in the ordinance. There was a lot of interest in, can we locate these in rural areas and can we have small scale commercial ones? And we were like, well, why do you want to do that? And they're all saying, well, we have a lot of interest from guys who they want to take advantage of these intersections. These are high traffic areas. There are plenty of places in town that now, instead of these being these rural outposts where there's not a lot of traffic, these are major thoroughfares for people coming in and out of the city every day where they'd like to locate at some of these areas. And so our idea was, do you really want to go through a 6 to 8 month process of the PUD ordinance, or is this something that might be more applicable to have a conditional use to look at on a case by case basis for different places in town that might make sense, that might be at some of these intersections or along these high traffic corridors and roadways? And so that was kind of the catalyst for us looking at it through a different lens beyond the PUD ordinance. And when we looked at it and kind of brought this to Planning Commission in its first iteration, it was, well, we'll just add this as a conditional use in the rural section. Some of them thought that was a little pervasive. You have entire neighborhoods that are rural. People didn't want that their neighbor within a neighborhood to be able to do it. But they thought, well, maybe we can put some constraints around this, just tied to road traffic, these intersections. Can we see arterials? Can we see collectors? What does that look like? And so we put together the maps that are the exhibits associated with this item, and that's how we got to the condition of must be in along a arterial or collector roadway. And then also we put the condition on with a lot of the rural zoning district just kind of being outside where we have our major street plan, or some of those lands not being annexed. So already that's why the condition is there for any governmental body outside of the city. I guess an appropriate governmental body outside of the city would be able to designate a collector as well. So that kind of encompasses all the roads kind of around the city that from a classification standpoint. So like I said, there was a lot of thorough thought. A lot of this came from input that people that we deal with, kind of pointing out that there's a lot of interest along taking advantage of these intersections and these arterials and collectors and looking at the high traffic areas. And then just kind of the feedback that we got from the Planning Commission that they didn't like it being so open to everybody in these rural neighborhoods, that they wanted it along these high traffic corridors. So that's why you see the condition associated with it.
We just didn't think it was a good fit. If they came before the council and we just thought it wasn't a good idea, on what basis would we make that decision? How would we deny
The basis
that
that
request?
is outlined in the zoning ordinance, and remind me, Justice, is it's Article 8?
Hold on, let me pull this up.
It's outlined. I mean, it's health, safety, welfare, but it can be a nuisance. You have to decide. You've turned down some conditional uses in recent time and stated very succinct reasons. If you can't mitigate it with landscaping, traffic improvements, what have you, and that was the challenge for those council members that dealt with the rural event centers. There was a lot of very robust, sticky discussion. Chadwick Lane was squarely in quite a heated discussion among both neighbors and council members about how that worked, and that's still a challenge. It's whether or not is it a nuisance or some sort of challenge for neighbors, and can it be mitigated or not, or is there a health, safety, welfare that's creating some major issue that could be an issue. I would recommend, if you do proceed with this, anytime that happens, we always vet legally, and all of you are very good about this. If you're not able to get behind something, we usually talk to our city attorney about that and be sure that you're tracking with what the law says.
Robert Wilkins, 261 Denson Drive, Auburn, Alabama. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Why? Why have I been denied Solid Waste Management Fund financial records by the City of Auburn? All I have requested as an Auburn citizen is a 2-line item from the Solid Waste Management Fund, which the city is responsible for. One of the line items is salary and wages, and the other is employee benefit for the first 8 months of the fiscal year 2025. And I've also asked for the number of employees for each year of 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, and 2025. That's all I'm asking for. That's it. Instead of helping me understand the excessive deficit of the Solid Waste Management Fund, the Mayor Pro Tem tells me she is happy with the numbers. The overpaid city manager has decided to relinquish her responsibilities to Paul Clark, Auburn City Attorney, which will cost the city hundreds of dollars per hour to have him correspond with me. Why? Even my city councilman has not helped in this issue. What is going on? We citizens have the legal and moral right to know where every dollar is spent by the City of Auburn. Every dollar. We have that right. The financial information that I have requested from the city manager, director of finance, for example, is kind of like trying to make a chocolate cake. I've been given a box of baking soda, 5 pounds of sugar, 10-pound bag of flour, a pound of butter, a pound of cocoa powder, a box of salt, a carton of eggs, a half a gallon of buttermilk, and 6 ounces of oil, and a bottle of vanilla extract. But they won't give me the recipe. But they told me, we have given you all the ingredients. But I need the recipe. What the city manager and city council members are saying is, we do not care about a citizen's concern, just your own. We as citizens have the authority and the rights through public records request to request any financial information. The 10 exceptions under the public records request do not apply to the request at all that I've done. In the annual comprehensive financial report, as within its pages, a leadership diagram where citizens are on the top, with the city council next, the city manager, and then the department heads. But the city has reversed the diagram. We citizens are on the cotton-picking bottom. I am requesting the Solid Waste Management Fund give the financial information that I've requested. Simple. Thank you.
I'm super nervous. Good evening, Mayor and council members. First and foremost, I'm here to express my gratitude for the time, the energy, the effort that y'all put in, along with our city employees, to do what's best for our community. Honestly, I don't know the fraction of what y'all do, but I imagine it's a relatively thankless job, so thank you. My wife and I moved here. We live out in the county on the west side of the city limits, kind of between Waverly and the Farmville area. We moved here 3 years ago after spending some time during COVID at Lake Martin. That's when we first started to frequent the Auburn Opelika community and really fell in love with what we found. So when we realized we can buy a modest house on some land out there on that side of town and still enjoy the amenities of the city, but have some peace and quiet in the county, we jumped on it. And since 2022 when we moved here, we've been very grateful and haven't looked back. Which is somewhat what brings me before you today. So as you can imagine, we were a bit surprised last month when we found out that a large timber tract bordering us, which is owned by an investment company in Atlanta, was in the beginning phase of working with some developers in Nashville to put in a high-density, mixed-use, kind of urban-style development that would start with a phase one of attempting to put 60 homes on 40 acres, but could potentially span up to 800 acres over the next few years if all goes according to their plans. And while I'm a proud supporter of development rights and free markets, as you can imagine, development of that size brought some concern to myself and some neighbors. And it's my belief that there's a time and a place for everything. And so something of that size in the county, outside the city limits, coming into Farmville off a dirt road, was a little bit concerning to us. But I have no real estate background. I had no idea what I could do. So a little Google searching, I realized that we're within the city's planning jurisdiction based on our proximity to the city limits. So since then, I've attended 2 council meetings, a city planning commission meeting. I've chatted briefly with a few members of the planning department. And since then, I've been nothing but impressed at the professionalism, the generosity of time, and the caliber of folks and the processes that I've observed. I've seen spirited debates about development. I've heard hard questions being asked. I've heard thoughtful questions being given. And I've seen multiple split votes on things, which to me is a good sign of a diversity of opinion working its way through the system. Don't get me wrong, I know not everything is perfect. I'm certainly not perfect. But I don't think the goal here is perfection. I think it's a commitment to slow, steady, relational engagement and hard work for folks that are here in this community to do what's best for our community, protect what we love, and make incremental improvements where it's necessary. And I appreciate the work that y'all are doing towards those ends. I appreciate the work that our city employees are doing to those ends. I appreciate that you give a voice to a new guy to town like me to be heard. If they continue to make their progress, I'm sure you'll hear more from myself and my neighbors down the road. But in the meantime, thank you.
Ms. Crouch, the particular development that Mr. Van Horn was mentioning, is that started through our system?
No, that development is not eligible to start through our system. It's outside. It is in our planning jurisdiction, so it will have to do one piece with planning commission, but it is outside the optimal boundary. I will be happy to brief the council at another time about this. We're just beginning to look at this, and I will be very clear that staff shares the concerns about the impact to our city limits. This is out Lee Road 86. There are some design charrettes that are going to be going on in the local area. I don't know why they're being held in the city limits. And we have been clear that this property is not eligible for annexation. I mean, they can submit an application, but it is outside the optimal boundary. And so we'll be talking to you much more about this. This is likely still just a subdivision regulation item that will only reside with the Planning Commission.
Theodore Roosevelt was quoted, "Behind the ostensibly government sits enthroned an invisible government, owing no allegiance and acknowledging no responsibility to the people." Citizens question. Ryan asks, why is the city denying your financial public records request for the Solid Waste Management Fund? Well, Ryan, the city manager has turned over her responsibilities to the costly city lawyer in denying me the limited financial information I have requested by twisting the public records request law, Alabama Code 361244D, Supplement 2024. Please make comments or become a guest speaker on Citizens Minutes by going to nextdoor.com or youtube.com. Your counsel is only as good as the information that you gather.